The alien council chamber was eerily quiet, the atmosphere thick with tension. The only sound that cut through the silence was the low hum of the machinery lining the walls. The room was bathed in cold blue light, casting an almost sterile glow on the faces of the beings seated at the long curved table. It had been a century since Earth had been considered of any consequence. A dying world, abandoned by its people, forgotten by the stars. The Council's leaders had long since dismissed Earth as irrelevant, a remnant of a time when humanity had once been a force to be reckoned with. But today, that complacency would be shattered. The head scientist, a creature whose skin shimmered like polished obsidian, stood abruptly. His tentacles twitched nervously, a sign that something was wrong. His normally calm demeanor was now marred by the thin sheen of sweat on his forehead. "Commander," he whispered, voice breaking the silence, "you need to see this." The commander, tall and regal with angular features, turned his gaze to the scientist. His expression was unreadable, but his mind raced. He had been summoned to the council for numerous updates in the past, but none of them had ever sounded this urgent. Without a word, he stood, his black armor gleaming faintly in the dim light, and crossed the room. The scientist, his voice trembling, gestured to the central hologram. "Look here!" The hologram flickered to life, showing a patch of empty space, unremarkable at first glance. But then the data began to shift. Something was happening. A signal, faint but unmistakable, emanated from the void. A signal from Earth. The commander's eyes narrowed. "Earth? Impossible. It's been abandoned for centuries." "I know, Commander," the scientist replied, his voice barely audible. "But this is something different." The hologram began to zoom in on the coordinates, revealing a distant star system. It was uncharted, isolated. No known civilization had ventured here in ages. But the signal was coming from there. The data continued to flow, an electromagnetic pulse, buried deep beneath layers of interference, flickering to life. It was ancient, archaic, and yet far more advanced than anything they had encountered before. The council members exchanged uneasy glances. Some looked at each other in confusion, while others wore expressions of dawning fear. One by one, the East Council's monitors blinked to life, displaying various readings, energy signatures, radiation levels, gravitational anomalies, but nothing made sense. It was as though the very laws of the galaxy were being rewritten in real time. The entire system was alive with an energy that felt wrong, alien. A low murmur rippled through the council, but it was the commander's voice that cut through the unease. "Can you pinpoint its origin?" The scientist nodded, though his face betrayed his confusion. "Yes, it's coming from below the surface of Earth, somewhere deep." The commander's heart skipped a beat. Earth. That forgotten planet, the cradle of humanity. It had been abandoned long ago, a forgotten relic of a once great civilization. And yet, something there was awakening, something that had been buried for millennia. The scientist faltered, trying to find the right words. "This is beyond anything we could have imagined." The commander stood still, his mind racing. He had heard whispers in the ancient archives about human technology, about weapons that had been locked away, hidden from the stars. Weapons of unimaginable power, capable of reshaping the galaxy. But those were just myths, old stories passed down by the ancients. Or so they had thought. The readings became clearer, sharper, as though the system itself was revealing its secrets, piece by piece. The commander stepped closer to the hologram, staring at the now vivid representation of Earth. It was silent, still, seemingly nothing out of the ordinary, yet beneath the surface there was something awakening, something with the power to change everything. "Prepare the fleet," the commander ordered, his voice cold and steady, though his heart raced. "We will go to Earth. We will find out what this is and eliminate it before it becomes a threat." His words fell heavy in the chamber. The room fell into a deathly silence as the council processed the gravity of the situation. The galaxy had long since dismissed Earth as nothing more than a dead world, a relic of a forgotten age. But now, as the data continued to pour in, it was clear that Earth was far from dead. It was a sleeping giant waiting to wake. "We'll need more than just a fleet," one of the council members spoke, his voice grave. "If what we're seeing is true, then we may be facing something far beyond our capabilities." The commander nodded, his mind already working through the possibilities. "Send a reconnaissance team first. I want all details on what's happening there. We need to understand what we're dealing with," another council member spoke, his voice laced with fear. "The humans, they were supposed to be extinct. The records, they were wrong," the commander cut him off sharply. "And we will see just how wrong they were." The silence that followed was deafening. For the first time in centuries, the galaxy's most powerful empire felt a flicker of doubt. The stakes were higher now than ever before. The ancient humans, thought to be a primitive species, might have been hiding something more dangerous than anyone had ever realized. Back on Earth, deep beneath the surface, the countdown had already begun. In a remote chamber, a single figure stood, watching the glowing screens of the control room. The machinery hummed to life as the ship, humanity's forgotten guardian, awoke from its slumber. The long-abandoned vessel, hidden for millennia, began to stir. Its systems powered up, the ancient AI flickering into life. Its first command was simple, but chilling. "Prepare for launch." The human commander spoke softly, his words carrying the weight of destiny itself. "The reckoning begins now." As the signal reached the alien fleet, an eerie silence fell over the council. They had underestimated humanity once before, but this time the stars themselves would fall silent in fear. The alien fleet, a vast armada of battle-hardened ships, loomed in the cold void of space as it approached Earth. Their commanders were unified in one purpose: to eliminate the threat that had begun to stir on the forgotten planet. The signal, once a distant anomaly, had grown stronger with each passing hour, a beacon from deep within the heart of Earth's forgotten surface. But what they had assumed would be an easy mission, a swift extermination, was beginning to feel like something far more dangerous. The galaxy's most formidable empire, with fleets that could crush entire worlds, was now second-guessing its own certainty. Inside the command ship, the council members stood in hushed anticipation, the cool glow of holographic displays illuminating in their faces. The data that streamed in from the reconnaissance teams was unsettling. The human technology they had found was unlike anything they had encountered before, advanced in ways that defied understanding. What had once been thought of as primitive humans, incapable of outlasting their own destruction, had left behind a legacy that was now awakening to challenge the very fabric of the galaxy's power structure. Commander Nauru, the leader of the alien fleet, stood before a massive display, studying the fluctuating energy readings. The signal from Earth had become a constant pulse, rippling through the void. It wasn't just the sheer strength of the signal that worried him, it was the nature of it. The pattern was too precise, too deliberate. It was as if someone or something had been waiting. The realization hit him like a cold wave. Earth wasn't a dead world, it was a trap. "Commander?" A voice broke through his thoughts. It was his chief tactician, Commander Zin, a sharp-minded strategist who rarely showed any fear, yet the tension in her voice was palpable. "The human ship, it's moving." Naru's eyes snapped to the central hologram. The image of Earth, once quiet and serene, now showed something new, a massive structure beneath its surface, something that had long been dormant. And from within that structure, a colossal energy signature was emanating, forming into a perfect sphere of power. The key ship, humanity's forgotten guardian, had activated, and it was no longer dormant. It was alive. "Deploy a second reconnaissance team," Naru ordered, trying to steady the growing panic in his chest. He was a seasoned commander, but nothing in his military career had prepared him for this. "We need eyes on that ship. I want to know everything." Within moments, the fleet's most advanced drones were dispatched. The first reconnaissance team had already reported a strange gravitational distortion surrounding the area where the human ship had awakened. But these new drones would get closer. The galaxy's most sophisticated AI systems would scour every inch of the human ship for weaknesses, but still a sense of dread lingered. On Earth's surface, the human ship had fully reactivated. Its once dormant engines rumbled to life, their low hum vibrating through the planet's crust as though it were shaking the very bones of the planet. The vast structure that had been hidden underground for millennia was now stirring. Power grids flickered, dormant machinery hummed, and a long-forgotten artificial intelligence began to awaken. It wasn't just any ship, it was humanity's last guardian, a relic from their greatest era of conquest. Inside the ship, Commander Elias, the leader of the human crew, stood at the bridge, his gaze fixed on the control panels that were now alive with blinking lights. His fingers hovered over the controls, feeling the weight of humanity's return pressed down on his shoulders. His crew was silent, their eyes wide with awe and fear as the ship's systems came online one by one. The long period of silence, of waiting, had come to an end. "Commander," a voice called from the comms station. It was Lieutenant Arin, his trusted second-in-command. "The primary engines are fully functional. We're good to go." Elias nodded grimly, his face reflecting both the relief and the weight of what was about to happen. "Prepare for launch. We're going back out there." Outside, the human ship began to ascend from its long-hidden cavern, moving with an almost unnatural grace. The massive structure broke free from the earth, its colossal form rising from beneath the surface like an ancient titan returning to life. The atmosphere around it shimmered with the heat of its power, ripples distorting the air as it powered up its engines. The fleet of alien ships in orbit had yet to understand the true nature of what they were dealing with. What they had thought was a peaceful, weak civilization was now showing its true face. And it wasn't one of submission. Meanwhile, on the alien command ship, the second reconnaissance team had reached the outskirts of the human ship's sphere of influence. The team's AI began to transmit images, data, and anomalies directly to the command center, but as the drones got closer, their transmissions began to flicker. Static filled the airwaves as the advanced drone systems began to fail. Something was blocking their signals, a force field, perhaps, an energy field more advanced than anything the Council had anticipated. The data they were receiving was distorted, garbled, as if the very fabric of space itself was bending around the human ship. Commander Zinn clenched her fists as she analyzed the deteriorating signals. "They've cloaked the ship," she muttered. "It's not just a weapon, it's a fortress." Naru's gaze hardened as he observed the data. The human ship was now fully visible, and he could see it in all its terrifying grandeur. Massive, ancient, and covered in a strange alloy that seemed to absorb the light. This wasn't just a relic of Earth's past. It was something much more dangerous, a living testament to a civilization that had been underestimated by the entire galaxy. But now, the galaxy was waking up to its mistake. The question now was simple. Could they stop the awakening before it was too late? "We need to neutralize it now," Naru said, voice firm, but the undercurrent of fear was palpable. "Fire the disruptors, all ships, target the core." The order was given, and the alien fleet unleashed a volley of high-powered disruptor beams aimed directly at the heart of the human ship. The beams ripped through space with terrifying precision, but as they neared the human vessel, something extraordinary happened. The disruptor beams seemed to dissipate, fading into the air around the ship like mist. The human vessel had activated a defensive system that even the alien fleet couldn't have predicted, an energy field so advanced that it absorbed the weaponry and redirected it back into the vacuum of space. Impossible, one of the alien commanders said in disbelief, watching the failed attack unfold on his screen. Their technology? We underestimated them, Zin interrupted, her eyes wide in realization. This isn't just a ship. It's a weapon. Elias stood before the control panel, feeling the ship's power coursing through him. Every system now locked and loaded. He wasn't just leading his crew. He was leading the remnants of humanity back into the stars, and he knew exactly what he had to do. His fingers hovered over the comm switch, and for the first time he addressed the galaxy at large. "This is Commander Elias of the United Earth Fleet," he said, his voice cold and clear. "We've been gone for too long, but we are back. And this time, the stars will bow to us. Prepare yourselves." As the last word left his mouth, the human ship activated its full arsenal, sending shockwaves through the space around it. The stars were no longer silent. The Guardian had awoken, and it was coming for the galaxy. ChatGPT said the massive alien fleet orbited Earth, now fully aware that what they had thought would be a simple operation had spiraled into a nightmare of their own making. The human ship, now fully operational, was no longer a myth. It wasn't just some ancient relic forgotten by time. It was a weapon, a fortress, and its emergence from the depths of Earth had changed everything. The galaxy's most advanced empire had underestimated humanity again. And this time, it was too late to reverse the mistake. The alien fleet commander, Nauru, paced back and forth in the command center of his flagship. His mind was racing, trying to piece together the disaster unfolding before him. The energy readings were off the charts. Whatever humanity had left behind on their dying planet, it was far beyond the scope of their understanding. The weapon the humans had activated was no mere ship. It was an entire technological revolution wrapped in one colossal, metallic shell. "Commander," Zin's voice broke through Nauru's thoughts, but there was an edge of urgency in it. "The human ship has launched countermeasures. All our systems are being jammed." Nauru's eyes shot to the central display. He had been hoping it was just a malfunction, that perhaps the ship's initial defense systems were malfunctioning, in a way they could exploit. But as the data continued to flood in, he realized they were facing something far worse than a malfunction. The human ship, once cloaked in mystery, was now operating at full capacity, and every sensor, every piece of technology in the fleet was being affected. One by one, the alien ships in orbit were starting to fail. Communications, targeting systems, and even basic navigational tools were being disrupted by an intense electromagnetic pulse originating from Earth's surface. It was like a shadow creeping over the fleet, rendering them blind. As the pulse intensified, alien ships began to shift unpredictably in space, unable to compensate for the interference. Crew members scrambled, trying desperately to regain control. But it was no use. The pulse was too strong. Zin looked to Nauru, her face contorted in disbelief. "The signal! It's coming from the human ship. It's designed to destabilize our technology." Nauru slammed his fist into the control panel in frustration. "I can see that, Commander. But we can't afford to sit here and do nothing." His voice grew cold, calculating. "Fire everything we have. Target the human ship, now." The order was given, and the fleet unleashed everything they had. Waves of laser beams, energy disruptors, and pulse missiles rocketed toward the human vessel, turning the dark expanse of space into a deadly display of lights. Every ship in the fleet fired in unison, focusing all of their firepower on the lone human vessel. It seemed like the only chance they had, destroy the ship before it could finish what it had started. But as the first wave of firepower neared the human ship, something incredible happened. The human ship's shields flared to life. The blasts of energy from the alien fleet slammed into the field, only to be absorbed and deflected in ways the alien technology couldn't comprehend. The light from the attack turned into a glowing orb, expanding outward as if the very air around the ship had been manipulated by an invisible force. The shields shimmered and twisted, converting the attacks into harmless energy before redirecting it back toward the alien fleet. A shockwave of displaced energy rippled across space. "We've been hit," one of the alien commanders shouted from across the fleet, his voice filled with panic. "Our outer hulls are being compromised." The first alien ship exploded in a blinding flash as the redirected energy from the human ship's shields surged into its engines, sending it spiraling into an uncontrollable inferno. As it burned and disintegrated, the rest of the fleet watched helplessly as their technology continued to falter. The second ship followed soon after, its weapons failing, its navigation systems scrambling, before it too became a smoldering wreck in space. The remaining fleet ships hesitated, unable to process the failure they were experiencing. The sheer force of the human ship's technology was far beyond anything they had anticipated. Even the most sophisticated alien defenses were being overwhelmed. The pulse, now amplified by the ship's energy field, was disrupting everything in its wake. Back on Earth, inside the command center of humanity's guardian ship, Commander Elias stood in front of a large, holographic screen. The image displayed the chaotic state of the alien fleet above. The data coming in was a mix of confusion, panic, and destruction. Elias's expression remained calm, but his eyes burned with the knowledge that humanity's time had finally come. For centuries, they had been dismissed as weak, insignificant. Now, they had the power to prove their worth. "Lieutenant Arin." "Status report," Elias commanded, his voice steady but sharp. Arin, his second-in-command, glanced up from the console, her face illuminated by the glow of the systems. "Their fleet is breaking apart, sir. The shields are holding. We've got full control over their weapon systems. They're firing blindly now. It's only a matter of time before their entire fleet is neutralized." Elias nodded, his mind calculating the next step. The weapon, the guardian ship, was only the beginning. Humanity had prepared for this moment for generations, long before the alien empire ever dreamed of reaching Earth. Hidden in the ship's systems was the final card, the one that would reshape the galaxy. "Activate the secondary systems," Elias ordered. Arin's fingers moved quickly over the controls. A hum filled the air as the systems inside the human ship began to shift. A deep, rumbling sound echoed through the ship as secondary thrusters activated, propelling the vessel forward. As the massive ship inched toward the alien fleet, a new layer of technology came to life. The ship's weapon systems powered up, sending signals to every corner of the galaxy. But it wasn't just the ship's weapons that were awakening. Hidden deep within the ship's ancient design was a massive gravitational disruptor, capable of altering the very fabric of space itself. "We're ready, Commander," Arin reported, a note of awe in her voice. Elias didn't answer right away. He stared out into the void, seeing the alien ships struggle, their systems flickering and failing. The power in their weapons was nothing compared to what the human ship could unleash. The galaxy had thought humanity extinct, but this was just the beginning. "Let's show them what it means to underestimate Earth," Elias muttered under his breath. The ship's gravitational disruptor began to hum as it focused its energy. A pulse of force stretched out across the void, aimed directly at the alien fleet. The effect was instantaneous. The fabric of space around the fleet began to warp, pulling and twisting as if reality itself was being reshaped. Ships that had been firing on the human vessel were suddenly caught in a gravitational field. Their momentum halted as they began to spin uncontrollably. Those that were closest to the human ship were ripped apart in an instant as the very gravity of space bent around them. The alien fleet was no longer a threat. They were caught in a trap of their own making, helpless as Earth's forgotten guardian rose from the ashes of their underestimation. As the final alien ships were torn apart, Elias spoke softly to his crew, his voice heavy with finality. "This is just the beginning. The stars have forgotten Earth. Now they'll remember." The silence of space was broken only by the hum of the human ship's engines as it slowly drifted into the heart of the alien fleet's shattered remnants. The once immense armada was now a graveyard of twisted metal and dying systems, with only a few ships left, their crews scrambling in a panic as they fought to maintain control over their failing vessels. The wreckage of their ships floated eerily in the void, their weapon systems useless, their communication lines severed. They had underestimated Earth, and now they were paying the price. On the human ship, Commander Elias stood before a massive viewport, his eyes fixed on the debris field outside. The stars twinkled in the distance, cold and indifferent to the destruction that had just unfolded. But Elias was not focused on the vast emptiness of space. His thoughts were elsewhere, on Earth, on humanity's forgotten legacy, and on the future. The battle was over. The alien fleet had been shattered. The galaxy's greatest empire, once so sure of its superiority, had been brought to its knees by a long-forgotten force. It had taken humanity centuries to reclaim their power, to activate the ancient ship that had been hidden beneath the surface of Earth, waiting for this moment. And now, with the alien fleet defeated, Elias knew that humanity's position in the galaxy had irrevocably changed. Earth had risen from the ashes, and the stars would no longer remain silent in the face of humanity's wrath. "Commander," a voice called from behind him. It was Lieutenant Arin, her voice filled with both relief and disbelief. "The fleet! They're done. We've disabled all their ships. We've won." Elias turned to face her, his expression grim yet resolute. "We didn't just win," he said, his voice low and filled with the weight of the moment. "We've reminded the galaxy that humanity was never meant to be forgotten. They thought we were weak, that we were dead, but we're not. We never were." Arin nodded, her eyes filled with a mixture of pride and fear. "What now, Commander? What do we do with the fleet? With the aliens that are still alive?" Elias's gaze hardened. "We give them a choice. They can leave, they can return to their own space, to their own people, and forget this ever happened, or they can stay and face the consequences of their actions." The alien fleet's remaining ships were damaged, but still operational. A few of the commanders had managed to send distress signals to their homeworld, but it was clear that they were no longer in control of their own fate. The human ship, its systems now fully operational, was the dominant force in this part of the galaxy. There was no more question of superiority. Humanity had shown the galaxy exactly what it was capable of. "We'll take their ships," Elias continued, his voice unwavering. "We'll take their technology, their knowledge, and we'll use it to make sure that Earth never falls into the same position again. But we're not going to destroy them. Not unless they force our hand. They'll know that humanity has returned. And they'll remember." Arin hesitated for a moment, then nodded. "Understood, Commander." Elias's eyes narrowed as he stared out into the void once more. "Humanity has always been underestimated. We've been abandoned, discarded, and forgotten. But we've been watching, waiting, and now the galaxy will know that Earth's forgotten guardian is awake. And we will not be silenced again." Back on the alien ships, the survivors were left in stunned disbelief. The once proud empire, which had crushed countless civilizations, had been decimated in a matter of hours. Their advanced technologies, their fleets, their strategies, Nothing had prepared them for the awakening of Earth's hidden weapon. They had thought humanity was nothing more than a memory. But humanity had been patient, waiting for the right moment to strike. Among the survivors was the alien commander Naru, who had been one of the first to underestimate Earth's power. Now, with his fleet destroyed and his forces crippled, he was left with no options. He had seen what the human ship could do, and he knew there was nothing left to fight. The galaxy's greatest empire had been humbled. As Naru stared at the damage to his command ship, his mind raced. "We were wrong," he muttered, his voice low and filled with awe. "We thought they were finished, but they never were." The realization hit him hard. Earth's guardian had not only awakened, but it had also revealed something far more powerful: humanity's resilience, their ability to endure. What the galaxy had seen as a primitive species was actually a force of nature, a species capable of surviving the impossible and rising to meet any challenge. They were not dead. They were not weak. They were humanity. Back on the human ship, Elias stood silently as the first of the alien ships, now under human control, drifted toward Earth. The remaining commanders had made their decision to leave, to return to their people, and to spread the word of what they had seen. But Elias knew that this was only the beginning. The alien fleet's retreat marked the start of something far greater. As the human ship activated its propulsion systems and began its slow journey back to Earth's orbit, Elias stood at the helm, watching as the stars seemed to fade into the distance. The galaxy had been changed. No longer would humanity be the forgotten species, the relic of a lost age. They had fought for their place in the cosmos, and they had earned it. The ship moved closer to Earth, and as it entered the planet's atmosphere, Elias spoke softly to himself, the weight of history pressing down on him. "We've waited long enough. The stars will remember us." And with that, the human ship, Earth's forgotten guardian, descended back onto its homeworld, the silent testament to humanity's strength and determination. The galaxy, once so sure of its dominance, had been forced to reckon with the forgotten legacy of Earth. The stars would no longer remain silent. The reckoning had begun. The future of humanity had just begun, and it would not be silenced again. Tools.